In this video, we're talking about a case from England in 2011. It's the story of 17-year-old Emily Longley, a girl with big plans and a future she was excited about until everything suddenly fell apart. The case drew a lot of attention, not just because she was so young, but because of everything that happened afterward. Emily was born in England in 1994 to Mark and Caroline Longley. 2 years later, her sister Hannah was born, and the two of them grew up incredibly close. Their home was warm, supportive, and full of the usual family chaos. In a good way when Emily was 9 and Hannah was 7. The family moved to Auckland, New Zealand. It became home pretty quickly, but as Emily got older, she ended up hanging out with people her parents didn't feel were good for her. Wanting her to have a fresh start, they decided to send her back to the UK to live with her grandparents. Emily flew to England to attend Brocklehurst College. She wanted to study business and dreamed of becoming a model. She moved in with her grandparents in Bournemouth, a coastal town in Dorset, known for its beaches and holiday vibe. Around that time, things were shifting back in New Zealand too. Hannah was still in school, and their parents had recently divorced, but stayed on good terms. Emily settled into life in England quickly. She was outgoing, funny, and the kind of person who caught people's attention without really trying. Eventually, she met 20-year-old Elliot Turner. He made a strong first impression, and before long, they were officially dating. In April 2nd, 2011, Emily flew back to New Zealand to visit her family. She hadn't seen them in about 6 months. Her dad met her at the airport, and as soon as she saw him, she ran over and hugged him hard, telling him how much she'd missed him. They had a close bond. He adored her sense of humor, her energy, and all the little things you miss when someone's been away the next day. The whole family went out to Emily's favorite pizzeria. Over pizza, she told them about school, modeling, and the new friends she'd made. She also mentioned the guy she was dating, Elliot. They'd only been together a few months, and she told her parents she didn't see it as anything too serious yet. "I think I'm going to end it when I go back," she said. Emily spent the next few weeks in New Zealand, hanging out with her friends and family. She was relaxed, happy, and genuinely enjoying her time there. No one had any reason to think anything was wrong, or that they'd be losing her so soon. When it was time for her flight back to England, saying goodbye was tough still. She promised her family she'd be back in 5 months. She wanted to be home for the Rugby World Cup, which was starting on September 9th. A few days later, while texting her dad, Emily told him she'd broken up with Elliot. She didn't explain much, just mentioned that it was over. One thing that had bothered Elliot was the photos she'd posted while she was in New Zealand. Some of them included guys she was hanging out with, and his jealousy kicked in hard. Elliot Turner was 20, the son of a wealthy jeweler, and on the surface he seemed to have an easy, comfortable life. He was well known around the bars and clubs in Bournemouth and Poole, and he hung out with a group of rich young guys who called themselves the Firm. His friends called him All Talk Turner because he bragged constantly. He and Emily first met in December 2nd, 2010. At first, things seemed fun, late nights, parties, and a lifestyle that felt exciting. But Elliot had a history of getting obsessive in relationships, and the same pattern started to show up with Emily. Their arguments became intense very quickly. People who knew him described him as aggressive, controlling, and icily set off. This wasn't new behavior either. Back in January 2008, when he was 16, police had given him a harassment warning after he bombarded an ex-girlfriend with texts and emails when she broke up with him. Elliot loved being the center of attention. He didn't work, his parents paid for everything, and he knew how to manipulate people, including them. His life revolved around partying, women, alcohol, and drugs. He acted like he could do whatever he wanted. He even carried a hammer around, supposedly for protection if someone challenged him. His friend said he liked to think of himself as a kind of wannabe gangster, the guy everyone went to for favors. He'd walk into a bar and buy drinks for the whole place just to make a point. He bragged about driving a new Mini Cooper though it was actually a gift from his grandmother. Online, he kept up that tough guy image, with posts full of fake street language, calling himself things like Scarface or even God. Elliot never struggled to get attention from women, but when he met Emily, he latched onto her quickly. She fit the image he wanted to project: successful, confident, and someone who made him look good. As their relationship went on, his controlling behavior became harder to ignore. At one point, he even threatened to take her life. A few months before she died, Emily wrote him a note. It was emotional and straightforward, almost like she was trying to get through to him. One last time, she wrote, 1. I love you. 2. Don't say you'll kill me. 3. Stop talking about your ex-girlfriends. 4. Stop being so aggressive all the time. Just relax, it's more attractive. And you scare me when you act so intimidating. When Elliot's behavior kept getting worse and crossed every line of what she felt was normal, Emily realized she couldn't stay with him. But people like Elliot don't take rejection well. On the night of May 6, 2011, Emily went out with friends. Surveillance cameras showed her arriving at a nightclub with them. That same evening, Elliot had been reading her Facebook messages and found out she was seeing someone else. He was furious. He showed up at the club and picked a fight with her. Things escalated quickly. Emily threw her drink in his face, and he responded by yelling at her and threatening her. He didn't like the outfit she was wearing, and said it was too revealing. Even though Emily had ended the relationship, he refused to accept it. He ruined her night and she decided to leave. But he followed her. Friends later said they heard him say, "We'll kill her. I'll go to prison for it and still be a millionaire. I'd do 10 years, it wouldn't bother me." Elliot eventually caught up with her and persuaded her to go back to his house, saying they could talk somewhere quieter. He still lived with his parents, and maybe that made Emily feel it would be safer, that he'd calm down in front of them. Neighbors saw the two of them walk into the house. The next morning around 9 a.m., Elliot's mother, Anita Turner, called emergency services. She said Emily wasn't waking up. While waiting for the ambulance, Anita followed the operator's instructions, hoping to help Emily until paramedics arrived. But by the time the ambulance got there, it was already too late. All they could do was pronounce 17-year-old Emily Longley dead. Anita, Elliot's mother, was originally from Indonesia. She had moved to the UK to marry Lee Turner. When they had their son, they gave him everything he wanted, which looking back turned out to be a serious mistake. When Anita called emergency services that morning, something felt off. Her voice didn't sound like someone who had just found her son's girlfriend unresponsive. She sounded strangely calm, almost as if nothing out of the ordinary was happening. Meanwhile, thousands of miles away in New Zealand, Emily's father, Mark, woke up at around 2 in the morning. He saw several missed calls from his ex-wife, Caroline, and from their younger daughter, Hannah. There was also a voice message from Hannah, but he could barely understand what she was saying. Then he heard Caroline in the background screaming, "Emily is dead." Mark couldn't accept it. He immediately called his mother in England. When she answered, she was crying uncontrollably. A moment later, a police officer took the phone and said, "I'm sorry to tell you that your daughter Emily has died just a week earlier." Emily had been sitting on his couch in New Zealand, smiling, laughing, acting like her usual self. Now he was being told she was gone. As he flew to the UK, he kept hoping it was all some kind of mix-up, but it wasn't. Losing their oldest daughter was devastating for both of Emily's parents. At first, the police told them she had died in her sleep, but that explanation didn't sit right. Emily was young, healthy, and full of energy. The police collected what evidence they could, but it still wasn't clear what had happened. Everyone had to wait for the autopsy. Elliot and his parents, Anita and Lee, told investigators they had been home all night and hadn't heard anything unusual. Elliot even posted photos of himself and Emily on Facebook, acting publicly heartbroken. At that point, the police didn't have enough solid evidence to prove his story was false. In any unexplained death, The first and most important step is figuring out the cause. Once investigators know how someone died, they can understand what direction the case should take. While they waited for the autopsy results, detectives looked deeper into Emily's recent activity and discovered that a few days before she died, had posted something unusual on her Facebook page. "Have a stalker," Emily wrote on Thursday, May 5th. "Someone just called me and I asked who it was. They said you don't know me, but I know everything about you. I asked how they got my number and they said, 'I'll tell you when I see you,' and kept asking me out, so I hung up. But they won't stop calling." Around the same time, police learned that Emily had argued with Elliot Turner in front of other people at a nightclub shortly before she died. After interviewing Elliot's friends, investigators found out that he tried to control almost everything Emily did. They also learned he knew she had been seeing another guy, and most importantly, that Elliot had threatened to kill her more than once. His friends brushed it off, assuming he was just talking big to sound tough. When the autopsy came back, it didn't give a clear cause of death, but the medical experts said the injuries could be consistent with strangulation. One expert noted that the findings matched what you would expect if pressure had been applied to her neck. Investigators began to suspect that someone in the Turner household might have been involved, so they installed listening devices inside the home. They wanted to know if the family was hiding anything, and it turned out they were. On the recordings, they heard Elliot coaching his mother on what to say to police and how she should act. His father, Lee, seemed to be the only one who realized this was wrong. But even he eventually went along with what his wife and son wanted. And then on those same recordings, investigators heard something even more important. Elliot admitting that he caused Emily's death. He was arrested a week after Emily died. He denied everything, and his lawyers tried to challenge the recordings, arguing they weren't reliable. But after reviewing all the details of the case, the judge allowed the audio to be used as evidence. Not realizing the police had been listening the whole time, Elliot had said that he was angry every single day, and that no one had ever made him as furious as Emily did. During the trial in May 2nd, 2012, his lawyer argued that he acted in self-defense. Elliot claimed the argument in his bedroom got out of hand, and that he grabbed Emily by the neck because he felt threatened. He insisted he didn't strangle her, and said he simply woke up the next morning and found her dead in his bed. On the second day of the trial, Turner told the court he was disgusted with himself for what happened that night. He claimed that after finding Emily dead, he wrote a letter to his mother saying he was ashamed and planned to leave for Spain. It looked as if he might have been preparing to leave the country on the day Emily died, but for whatever reason, he didn't go through with it. When police arrived after the 9 call, they noticed bags already packed. His passport was even in his pocket. In court, Elliot admitted he had threatened Emily and said he'd been upset and felt tricked the night before her death. He said he'd seen emails on her phone that made it look like he had smashed her face into a table, emails that turned out to be fake. When he described the argument that happened before Emily died, he claimed she started hitting him with her hands and feet. He said he tried to calm her down, then eventually gave up and tossed her a 20-pound note for a cab. According to him, she just ignored me at first. Then 5 seconds later, she went crazy. I had never seen Emily that angry. I didn't know what to do. She wouldn't stop. I kept telling her, "Stop it. Calm down," he said. That's when he grabbed her by the neck with his right hand. The defense counsel Anthony Dunn asked him, "Why'd you do that?" Turner replied, "To stop her going nuts. I didn't know what to do. My right hand made contact with her neck." When asked how hard he grabbed her, Turner said, "I wouldn't say very hard, but it was quite hard." He explained that he grabbed her, pushed her onto the bed, and pressed down on her neck while she was lying down. According to him, he held her there for 5 or 6 seconds, then let out and walked out of the room. When the defense asked if he meant to kill her, Turner said no. He said he thought she had fallen asleep, and that he didn't realize she was dead until she didn't wake up the next morning. In an interview with the Herald newspaper, Emily's father, Mark, talked about how difficult it was to lose his daughter. "Here's the thing about death," he said, "sucks. It doesn't matter if it's your child, your partner, or your 99-year-old grandmother. It sucks a person is here one day and gone the next. And it's not something you ever get used to." He said that every milestone is painful: birthdays, Christmas, Easter. All of it. Easter was especially hard, because it was the last time he had really spent time with her. For him, the heaviest part was knowing he would never get to see the woman she would have grown up to be, miss seeing the life she never got to live. "We only got a small glimpse of the woman she was becoming, and I was so proud of her," Mark said. "I'm her father, so of course I'm biased. But the world really was a better place with her in it. It was definitely a lot more fun." At the trial, Elliot Turner was portrayed as a spoiled, wealthy young man whose parents tried to shield him from any consequences. The court heard that he had full run of the family's home in the upscale Queen's Park area of Bournemouth, where he regularly held parties for his middle-class friends. His father, Lee, described these parties as wild. Elliot had been given his own living space in the converted garage, so he could come and go without bothering his parent. It was in that room, with its own minibar and the privacy he was used to, that he strangled Emily on his bed. When police examined computers from the Turner house, they found search queries like death by strangulation and how to avoid punishment for a crime. Jealousy was identified as the main motive. The court heard testimony from Luke Ashford, the man who had spent the night with Emily. Shortly before her death, Elliot had found out about it. And even while he was in custody, he bragged that the jury would believe his twisted version of events, that Emily attacked him, and he had only acted in self-defense. In letters he wrote from prison to his friends, he claimed he'd soon be driving a new Range Rover and moving to Spain. He talked about selling the rights to his story and living a glamorous life. But the jury ended those fantasies quickly when they returned a guilty verdict. On May 22, 2012, Elliot Turner was sentenced to life in prison, with a minimum of 16 years. Announcing the verdict, Mrs. Justice Dobbs described him as a man of striking arrogance. She said Emily was a lovely, kind, fun-loving girl, brought a ray of sunshine to those she touched. That light has been extinguished suddenly and needlessly by you. She told him that he didn't love Emily. She was a trophy, and the relationship, if it could even be called that, was all about control. Control he enforced with threats and aggression. Mrs. Justice Dobbs also sentenced him to 9 months to run concurrently for perverting the course of justice. But Elliot Turner wasn't the only one on trial. His parents, Anita and Lee, had been giving him money for years to keep up his partying lifestyle, and they loved him so that they tried to cover up what he'd done. Lee destroyed a letter in which Elliot confessed, and Anita removed the jacket from the bedroom where the letter had supposedly been written. She even delayed calling an ambulance so Elliot could hide evidence, and the family could settle on a story to tell police. When Anita was asked why she didn't call an ambulance, she said she didn't believe Emily was dead. During cross-examination, she was asked whether she thought Emily had ruined her son's life. After a long 6-second pause, she said no in one of the recordings played in court. Asked his wife if they'd done the right thing. "We've done the right thing," she replied. Both Anita, who was 51, and Lee, who was 54, were found guilty of perverting the course of justice, were each sentenced to 27 months in prison. Mrs. Justice Linda Dobbs told them, "You chose to fight this case." Showing little remorse, she added that, although Lee claimed he didn't know what was in the letter when he burned it, his voice on the recording made it clear that it weighed heavily on him. The Turners were released in 2013 after serving half of their sentence. They still live in the same house where Emily Longley died after the verdicts. Emily's father, Mark, broke down as he spoke to the media, standing with his ex-wife Caroline and their daughter Hannah. He said, "What we've heard over these 5 weeks has shocked us and disgusted us, that a man as cruel as Turner could treat a gentle, loving girl like Emily so violently is impossible to understand." He said they were incredibly proud of Emily proud that she traveled halfway around the world to build a better life for herself, and devastated that Turner chose to end that life. Mark also talked about Turner's repeated threats and boasting. No one took him seriously until it was too late, he said. He explained that even Turner's own mother didn't react when Elliot texted her saying he was going to break Emily's neck. Maybe if someone had taken him seriously, Emily might still be here today. He ended by saying, I hope Turner thinks about what he's done every single day he's in prison. In October 2020, the press reported that Elliot Turner had been beaten by his cellmates in prison. The incident happened after he put up photos of Emily in his cell and bragged about receiving letters from women, called themselves his fans. Some of the men turned on him when he started talking about how he'd soon be back to a life filled with champagne, Bentleys, and birds in about 5 years. Turner will be allowed to apply for early release. Many people can only hope the parole board uses good judgment, especially when it comes to someone who still shows no real remorse for what he did.